Veeam comes with a lot of different general settings as well as job defaults for our backups. So if I go in the upper left-hand corner and click the drop down, here's the general options that I can set up. And we've got 6 different general options. The first one is going to be I/O control. So if I click to enable the storage latency, you can see that we can stop assigning new tasks to the data store for a certain amount of milliseconds. We can also throttle existing tasks and set custom thresholds. And the reason for this I/O control is so that when we're backing up jobs on production servers, we don't end up using all of the bandwidth that the clients need in order to access these resources. So you can go in and change the throttling, change the assigning new task, data store, etc. And you can also click on configuring here for latency settings if you'd like to, in order to keep users from being impacted directly. Another section is going to be security. Here I can go in and click install to make changes to the certificate. Now, just by installing Veeam, I went ahead and added in a certificate. I didn't actually make any changes myself. The installation did it all by itself. And I can choose to keep that existing certificate that was created during the installation, and that's going to be used for encryption. And then I can also generate a new certificate. It's going to be a self-signed certificate. And the only reason you'd want to generate a new one is if the old one expired or became corrupt, causing your encryption not to work properly, or if somehow you believe that the certificate that was automatically generated during installation became compromised somehow. I can choose to select a certificate from a certificate store. So if I have a store that I trust and I don't want to use the self-signed certificate, then I can go ahead and choose that. One of the advantages of choosing the certificate from the certificate store is that I can regenerate that certificate if needed. Whereas if I use a self-signed certificate and that certificate gets lost, then I may have a difficult time unencrypting any files that I have encrypted. And if I choose to get a public certificate, for example, then I can import that from a file as well. And that's also a great idea because I can always re-import that certificate in case that certificate is lost and I need to unencrypt any files. I'm going to cancel that and move on to the Linux host authentication. As you can see under trusted hosts, I've already added in one of my Linux hosts, and it's going to add all discovered hosts to the list of trusted hosts automatically. But if I don't trust those, then I can choose which hosts I can add in manually. If you require FIPS certified encryption modules, you can go ahead and select that. In most cases, that's not going to be something that you would need. If you do know what FIPS is and how it works with your backups, then you already understand if you need FIPS or not. Then we have audit logs location. This is going to be where you can go in and audit your backup jobs in a text file format if needed. And you can compress those older logs if you'd like because they can take up a lot of space. If I go to email settings, here's where I can set up email notification, and we can choose an SMTP basic authentication server. That's really not being used that much anymore. I can also choose Google for Gmail or Microsoft 365. And here I can put in the from, the to, as well as the subject. Now, the subject I would leave as is because it's going to fill in information about the backup here. And you can see I can send daily reports at a certain time about successes, warnings, failures, or I could suppress notifications until the last job retry. So that way, if you have multiple different jobs going on, then you can suppress that notification until it gets to the very last try. And that's because not all backup jobs work on their first pass. There could be issues with the server restarting from an update or some other problem. And then when it retries that backup, when it retries, it's successful, and then it will send you that information. If I go to Microsoft 365 Advanced, I can choose the custom application registration settings, and I can add in my client and tenant ID information. I'm going to uncheck email and move on to notifications. Notifications are going to send emails not just when a backup job completes or has an issue, but also in case you have a disk problem. So for instance, if my disk space goes below 10%, it's going to send me that information. And I can change that to 20% or 5%, however I need to set that. I can also get information about production data stores as well as support expiration. So say my support license is about to expire, then it's going to send me a message that I need to renew that, as well as updates. When an update needs to happen, then it can go ahead and update me on that as well. If I go to history, this is the history of the backup sessions that happen. So I can limit the amount of backup sessions in case I don't want to see as many as the default is, which is 500, or I can click on show all sessions as well. Unfortunately, if you choose all sessions or too many sessions, you may notice that it takes a long time to scroll through all the different backups and backup jobs that have happened. And then the session history retention, you can choose how many weeks, or you can choose to keep all sessions if needed. I'm going to go back to my drop-down list and choose my users and roles. And here you can see the administrators are going to be the ones that can manage all of these backups. I can add in two-factor authentication or enable auto log off after a certain amount of inactivity. So that way, if that administrator walks away from their computer, it doesn't end up making it so somebody else can walk up to it and run a restore to another device. And if I want to have more than one administrator, I can click add and I can choose the role. So I can browse to a user or a group, and I can choose the restore, the backup operator, the Veeam backup administrator, which has the most amount of rights. And then I have a tape operator and a backup viewer. So if you have junior administrators, this is a great place to add some sort of access. I'll go back up to the top and choose my network traffic rules. These rules have to do with backing up and restoring to the internet as well as the local area network and setting certain parameters. So if I select the existing one that I did not add in, it was just automatically added during installation, and click edit, and here you can see this is the traffic rule out to the internet. How this helps is it keeps your backup programs from using all of your internet bandwidth, and you can throttle that information by choosing how much bandwidth that the backup is going to be able to use when backing up or restoring from cloud services such as AWS and Azure. By default, there's not going to be any throttling that happens. However, the traffic is going to be encrypted by default. Now, if I'd like, I can also add in an additional rule, and I can choose that rule for the LAN, the local area network. I can choose this source address range and the target range, and this is going to be for a specific subnet. So if you're using multiple subnets or VLANs in your organization, then you can choose how much network traffic you're going to allow and whether or not it's going to be encrypted. If I don't create a rule, it's just going to have full access to all VLANs and subnets in the network. I'm going to go back up to my menu once again and go to Configuration Backup. And this is going to be the default where backups are going to go for any new backup I create. Now I can override this if I need to simply by choosing a different repository, but by default it's going to go to the default one that you see here, or I could default all backups to my NAS, which is going to be my network backup as well. And I can choose how many restore points to keep. And I can set up notifications, I can perform backups on a certain schedule, and I can choose the last successful backup. I could choose backup now. Now, if I choose the enable backup file encryption, then I'm going to need to choose a password that might have already been created, or I can create a new one and add it here. And the last thing I want to talk about is this restore option. This is the configurations that are set up on the backup server itself. So you can click restore if you'd like to restore those settings back to the server in case you've had an issue where the backup jobs have disappeared or became corrupt and you would like to restore that information so you don't have to recreate all the different backup jobs. Backup configurations and defaults can help you manage your backups more efficiently by setting the security, notifications, and settings that work best for you.